Hello, this is Peter Swartz, and this is the program Someone You Should Know. And we're pleased to have with us today a gentleman by the name of Captain Caral Fismer, and he's with the Spanish Treasure Company. And we're going to be talking about treasure hunting today. And hello, Caral, how are you today?
Pretty good, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Well, we had you once before. We got you again. The first taping didn't go very well. Glad to have you back. I'm glad we did. We missed a lot of great information on the first taping that we can talk about, because treasure hunting sounds very romantic, dangerous, and everything. But tell us a little bit about exactly what it is that you do.
Well, usually we have good research on a shipwreck. And the reason we have that is I worked with the best archival researcher in the world. He made many trips over to the Archive of the Indies in Seville, Spain. And that's where they keep over 300 years of Spanish galleon treasure ships sailing right past this coastline here.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we're talking about the sunken ships, you're primarily interested in the old galleon type of thing, the Spanish ships, the trade ships, not the newer vessels.
Not necessarily. There's a few exceptions, but yeah, the Spanish galleons were loaded with gold and silver and a lot of historical content. And I like to think that we are preserving history. And we're also returning to public domain treasure, coins, and artifacts that have been lost for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm. How many years have you been doing this?
This is number 47.
47 years. And over those 47 years, how many wrecks have you actually identified and gotten artifacts off of?
Well, how many wrecks have I been on is about 300. How many good wrecks I've been on, maybe 30 or 40, is where we can actually recover treasure from them. Now, every wreck has artifacts or, fun things like bronze nails that the ship was built out of. And that's good for, tourists go diving, and I did too. I picked up a lot of them in the early days, but you never make any money that way. If you're serious, especially if you're spending other people's money, you have to pretty much make rapid fire decisions and hope that they're right.
I would imagine a lot of the ships that you find have already been picked over, right?
That's correct. In fact, I've had my biggest success reworking Spanish galleons that have already been worked. Like the Conception, for example, the coin I'm wearing right here is a Conception coin. It sank in 1641. It got a good workout and discovered in 1980 by Jack Haskins, the man that does the research work. And then 6 years later, I got the lease on it and went back because I figured, well, you're in the TV and radio business, electronics is always improving and improving. Mm-hmm. So after 6 years, we had better electronic metal detectors. And so I said, let's rework the Conception. And we did. And we found the stuff that they missed the first time, about 12,000 of these coins, for example.
Well, they get pretty much distributed over a wide area most of the time, don't they? And you have to, it's not like they just fall in one spot, but it could be, as the ship is breaking apart and sinking, it could throw stuff all over the ocean floor.
That's exactly right. In fact, the last Spanish galleon I was on recently, it had, well, we call that a scatter pattern. Mm-hmm. And what the ship hit the reef, and it scattered for 44 miles.
Wow.
And we tracked the whole thing. We picked up treasure right there where it hit the reef, and 44 miles north of there, we picked up a lot more treasure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure you have some interesting stories and some. We were talking recently, or just before we came on to do the taping here, about some incident that you had with the hurricane and that where it wrecked, pretty well tore you up, didn't it?
Yeah, so it's, all in all, I've been in 3 hurricanes, but Hurricane Lily was the worst and the most expensive. The good thing, I lost 2 boats, 2 out of 3 boats I lost, and the good news is shortly before the hurricane, there was a boatload of Haitian people that were stranded about 15 miles offshore down there. I'd say 20 people, and their captain had rowed into shore with a couple of helpers in a small boat, and was begging everybody, would they help, would they help? And we didn't know at the time Hurricane Lily was only hours away. We thought it was past. But in any case, Greg, my engineer, and I went out, and we towed their boat in. As we're just, if they'd have stayed out there a few hours longer, none of them would be with us today.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about some of the adventures that you've had, some of the things that you've found, and I want to ask you a question about what would you say the most successful find that you have ever had. So we'll be back in a minute with more of Someone You Should Know. Okay, so that was the first, that was about almost 7 minutes long. I know time goes by so darn fast when you're trying to do this. Anytime you're ready to tape the second part, let me know, Earl.
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Oh, we can. Is it still running?
Yep.
Oh, it's still running. Okay. Now, Caral, let me ask you about the some of the more significant finds. What would you say in the 40-some years that you've been doing this, what was the most significant or valuable find that you have ever encountered?
Well, the artifacts I like best to recover, some are very valuable and some are not. I like the religious artifacts, crosses and things like that. The Spanish, as you may know, were devout Catholics, and they sent a lot of priests over here to the New World, and the priests would bring a lot of bronze crosses with them and their own personal religious things, and their mission was to convert the Indians to Christianity.
That was during what, the 1600s, 1500s?
It started in the 15 and went right up into the 18s.
Mm-hmm.
More than 300 years. After that, they all had their revolutions. About 1810, Simon Bolivar went through South America and liberating all those countries from Spain. And in fact, they named Bolivia after Simon Bolivar. He's a great hero. They still have statues to him. I worked in a lot of those countries. In fact, I worked in almost every country that's on what's known as the Spanish Main, and those were their sailing routes.
And so you recovered a lot of the religious, and are they valuable from the standpoint of can you turn them into real money?
Yes, in fact, there's two exceptionally wealthy people that I know in the United States, and that's all they, well, it's not all, but that's what they prefer. Jack Haskins, a man that I worked with for 31 years, recovered what's called a monstrance, which is like a gold replica of a chalice sitting on the altar on one side, and then on the other side is Our Lady of Guadalupe holding the baby Jesus. That is the most popular icon in all the Spanish countries. Just about every lady in every house in Latin America has Our Lady of Guadalupe. So Jack recovered this piece. Dr. Mendel as soon as he got it out of the water, I'm taking pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Mendel Peterson, who was the shipwreck curator for the Smithsonian for 30 years, flew all the way down to the Keys just to look at this piece, and he appraised it at $250,000. The most unique piece to be recovered from the 1733 fleet. The best religious artifact I've recovered is a little egg-shaped, about yay big, and it's called a reliquary. And it's a container from a saint or a martyr from 2,000 years ago. There were 2 hand-carved rosewood rosaries inside of this reliquary. And right where the crossbars cross each other is 2 little slivers of wood laid in there. And those are slivers of wood from a saint or a martyr who was crucified 2,000 years ago. Like when St. Peter was crucified, he said, I don't deserve to die like Christ, to crucify me upside down, which they did. And after he was dead, the faithful cut up St. Peter's cross. And I'm not saying what I have came from
Right.
St. Pete, because it's impossible.
Well, yeah,
to
there's no
research.
way to really prove it. I
Yeah.
mean, but you're
But
going by.
yeah, it's from one of them. And these little hand-carved rosewood crosses are inlaid with 22-karat gold. The box itself had been dipped in 22-karat gold. It's just a beautiful, intact, rare, valuable artifact with religious significance.
Well, you know, we could go on for probably an hour with all the different stories, but we're quickly running out of time. And what projects are you working on now? And when do you ever intend to quit?
I don't intend to quit. Right now, my diving partner, Captain Bradley Williamson, and I have made an offer to purchase a salvage vessel that belonged to Commander Bob Weller, who was one of the very best known and successful treasure hunters in our business. Bob passed away about 5 years ago, and we just found his boat up near Cocoa Beach. And Brad and I are trying to purchase it, put it back in order, and we're going to start on some research from Jack Haskins, where several places I found, because Jack, when he passed away, he left everything to me. And if you're into archival research, I'm about the only game in town these days.
How big of a vessel is this?
Well, this one it's only 28 feet, because the shallow water is where we need to take it. The biggest boats I've worked on offshore has been a little over 100 feet. It just depends on the job. The boat depends on the job. And this one is certainly, we're probably going to be working in 4, 5, 6 feet of water.
Really? That shallow?
Oh yeah, when the ballast fell out of the bottom of the ship, now it's just all made of wood, and now it's light, and that boat's going to shore. That's why most of the gold we've recovered has been in the best gold I've picked up has only been like in waist deep water.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time, unfortunately, but I think what we're going to do is we'll probably have you back again sometime and continue with this, because it is a very interesting, and we just thank you for coming by. We've been talking with Caral Fismer, and Spanish Main Treasure
Company. That's correct.
Company, so I got that right. Well, Caral, thank you for coming by, and join us again next time for another Someone You Should Know. Okay, we'll put it in the can.